The Quran, a text holding profound significance for many, contains verses that speak of a group of people who transgressed and were consequently transformed into apes, despised. This narrative has long intrigued scholars and laypersons alike, prompting the question, who are these individuals and what does this transformation signify? Could this be a purely allegorical account, or might it hint at a historical event, perhaps veiled in metaphorical language? The very nature of Scripture often invites deep contemplation, pushing us to explore meanings that may not be immediately apparent on the surface. The search for understanding these verses requires a careful consideration of context, language, and the broader human story, a story that science continually helps us to unravel with new discoveries. An intriguing hypothesis proposed by thinkers like Yasser suggests a rather startling candidate for these cursed apes, the Neanderthals. This idea immediately sparks curiosity, bridging ancient religious narratives with the findings of paleoanthropology. At first glance, connecting a hominin species, known primarily through fossil records and archaeological findings, with a specific Quranic account might seem a considerable leap. Yet the proposition invites us to look closer at what we understand about Neanderthals, and how their characteristics might, however speculatively, resonate with the descriptions found within the sacred text. It compels a re-examination of both the scientific evidence and the scriptural interpretations in a new light, fostering a dialogue between seemingly disparate fields of knowledge. The similarities between Neanderthals and modern humans are indeed quite striking and form a crucial part of this hypothesis. Far from the brutish cavemen of popular imagination, scientific understanding now paints a picture of Neanderthals as a sophisticated hominin species. Genetically, we know that early modern humans interbred with Neanderthals, and many people today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. This genetic closeness underscores a shared ancestry and biological kinship. Furthermore, Neanderthals walked upright, much like us, possessed large brains, sometimes even larger than the average modern human brain, and exhibited complex behaviors such as tool-making, hunting in groups, and possibly even caring for their sick and elderly, challenging earlier, simpler portrayals. Beyond their physical and genetic resemblances, there is growing evidence suggesting Neanderthals might have possessed capabilities for symbolic thought and perhaps even rudimentary language. Discoveries of cave art attributed to Neanderthals, the use of pigments, and the potential for ritualistic behaviors point towards a cognitive complexity that blurs the lines previously drawn between them and early modern humans. If they indeed had linguistic abilities, however developed, it would further align them with the concept of a people who could receive and understand or willfully disregard divine commandments or warnings. These human-like attributes make the idea of them being a transformed group rather than an entirely separate, less developed species, a point of compelling discussion within this interpretative framework. A significant challenge to the hypothesis identifying Neanderthals as the Quranic cursed apes arises from their commonly accepted timeline. Paleontologists generally place Neanderthals as living from approximately 400,000 to around 40,000 years ago. This vast expanse of time, particularly their apparent disappearance tens of thousands of years before the advent of the Abrahamic religions and the revelation of the Quran, presents a substantial chronological hurdle. If these dates are absolute and unassailable, then connecting Neanderthals directly to a narrative understood within a more recent historical or theological framework becomes exceedingly difficult. This temporal disconnect is often the first and most significant objection raised against such an interpretation, demanding careful consideration. However, Mr. Anwar, in an addendum to his work, posits that the scientific dating methods used to establish this timeline are neither infallible nor absolute. This is a crucial point. Science, by its very nature, is a process of ongoing discovery and refinement, and its methods, while powerful, are built upon certain assumptions and are subject to inherent limitations. Techniques such as radiocarbon dating, thermoluminescence, and uranium series dating, though invaluable tools in archaeology and paleontology, each carry their own set of operational parameters and potential sources of error. Acknowledging these limitations is not a denial of scientific endeavor, but rather an embrace of its core principle, critical inquiry, and the willingness to revise understanding in the face of new evidence or re-evaluation of existing data. Radiocarbon dating, for instance, is one of the most well-known methods, yet it has well-defined constraints. It relies on the decay of carbon-14, an isotope with a half-life of approximately 5,730 years. Consequently, its accuracy significantly diminishes for materials older than about 50,000 years, as the amount of remaining carbon-14 becomes too small to measure reliably. Many Neanderthal fossils and the contexts in which they are found are believed to be much older than this limit. Therefore, their dates often depend on indirect methods, such as dating the stratigraphic layers in which they are discovered or associated materials found nearby. These indirect approaches can be complicated by geological disturbances, such as earth movements or water action, which might shift layers and distort the chronological context over millennia. Furthermore, the risk of contamination poses a persistent challenge to the accuracy of dating ancient samples. Over tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years, fossilized remains are susceptible to contamination from various sources. Groundwater seeping through the earth can introduce newer or older carbon particles. Microbes can colonize the samples, and even handling during excavation or in the laboratory can inadvertently introduce modern carbon. Such contamination can significantly skew the results of dating analyses, potentially making very old samples appear younger, or in some cases affecting the perceived age in other unpredictable ways. These factors contribute to a degree of uncertainty that must be acknowledged when considering the established timelines for ancient hominins. Even when dates fall within the effective range of a method like radiocarbon dating, they often require calibration to provide a more accurate calendar age. This calibration process involves comparing the raw radiocarbon dates against other chronological records, such as those derived from tree rings, dendrochronology, ice cores, or deep-sea sediment cores. These reference data sets provide a historical record of atmospheric carbon-14 fluctuations. However, these environmental records themselves can have inconsistencies or regional variations which can introduce further layers of uncertainty into the calibrated dates. Discrepancies between different calibration curves or data sets can lead to slightly different age estimates for the same sample, highlighting the interpretative aspect involved in the science of dating. The potential for inconsistencies in these calibration records means that chronological precision can be elusive, especially when dealing with periods approaching the limits of a particular dating technique. What might appear as a clear sequence of events based on uncalibrated dates could become less distinct, or even show potential overlaps between different populations or archaeological cultures, once calibration uncertainties are fully considered. This doesn't invalidate the dating methods themselves, but it does underscore the importance of understanding their error margins and the assumptions that underpin their application. For a hypothesis that hinges on a revised understanding of Neanderthal chronology, these nuances in dating science are of paramount importance for a comprehensive evaluation. Beyond radiocarbon dating, other techniques like thermoluminescence (TL) and optically stimulated luminescence (OSL) are used to date materials like heated flint tools or sediments, while uranium series dating is applied to calcium carbonate formations, such as stalactites in caves or tooth enamel. Each of these methods operates on different physical principles and comes with its own specific set of assumptions and potential pitfalls. For example, TL and OSL dating rely on assumptions about the initial zeroing of the luminescent signal, for example by sunlight or heat, and the stability of the radiation dose rate from the surrounding environment over vast timescales. Uranium series dating assumes a closed system regarding uranium and its decay products. Violations of these assumptions can lead to inaccurate age determinations. It is crucial to frame this critique not as a wholesale rejection of scientific dating, but as a methodological examination pertinent to an extraordinary claim. Yasser Anwar's addendum aims to highlight that if these established dating methods carry larger error bars than commonly acknowledged, or if systematic biases have led to an underestimation of how recently Neanderthals might have persisted, or perhaps an overestimation of their general antiquity, then the chronological objection to his Quranic hypothesis would indeed be substantially weakened. The argument focuses on the inherent limitations and potential for refinement within scientific practice itself, rather than a denial of its overall utility or validity in understanding the past. This approach seeks to maintain credibility while asking critical questions about the accepted narrative. The theological implications of reconsidering the Neanderthal timeline in light of Quranic descriptions are quite profound. If, hypothetically, Neanderthals or a distinct group exhibiting Neanderthal-like characteristics existed more recently than current mainstream science suggests, potentially overlapping with timelines more congruous with early human societies as understood in religious traditions, it could open new avenues for interpreting scriptural passages about transformed peoples. Such a scenario might allow for a reading where the cursed apes were indeed a known human-like group, distinct yet related, whose fate served as a divine sign or lesson. This doesn't necessarily confirm the hypothesis, but it changes the nature of the conversation from impossible to speculatively plausible within a broader, interpretative framework. The core aim of proposing such a connection and questioning the accepted chronology is not to definitively assert that Neanderthals the cursed apes, but rather to cultivate what Anwar terms theological and scientific space. This space allows for a re-examination of deeply entrenched assumptions in both domains. It encourages a scholarly environment where ancient texts can be explored alongside scientific discoveries without demanding that one immediately capitulates to the other. Instead, it fosters a dialogue where potential, albeit unconventional, correlations can be considered, prompting deeper investigation into both the nuances of scripture and the frontiers of scientific understanding about human origins and diversity in the ancient world. This pursuit of truth, as the revised conclusion of Anwar's work suggests, necessitates a willingness to question not only fossilized dates, but also fossilized assumptions. Assumptions can become entrenched in scientific paradigms just as they can in theological interpretations. Challenging them, when done rigorously and thoughtfully, is a hallmark of intellectual progress. The Neanderthal enigma, with their surprising sophistication and close relationship to modern humans, already prompts science to continually revise its understanding. Introducing a theological perspective, however speculative, can add another layer to this ongoing inquiry, encouraging us to think about our ancient cousins in ways that transcend purely biological or archaeological categorizations, engaging with their potential place in broader human narratives. Ultimately, the proposition invites a continued and respectful dialogue between the realms of science and theology. The question of Neanderthals and their potential connection to Quranic archetypes of divine intervention serves as a fascinating case study for how these different ways of knowing might interact. Instead of viewing them as inherently contradictory, perhaps they can be seen as complementary paths, each offering unique insights into the complex tapestry of human existence, our origins, and our enduring search for meaning. Further exploration, driven by both scientific rigor and thoughtful theological reflection, may yet shed more light on the mysteries of our shared past and the ancient narratives that seek to explain our place in the cosmos.